Yeah, of course. So my name is Destin, or you can call me Bronzey. I played professionally almost near the beginning, a few months after Apex released. Um, when I got signed in December to Golden Guardians with iiTzTimmy and my teammate Pete Fitter,
Oh, nice.
and um, we went through like some we qualified for Texas majors. COVID happened, and then I decided to take a break for some personal stuff, relationships, family, and stuff like that. And then I decided to come back in January of 2021, and heck of a streak that we had of great placements. Being free agents, got signed to more organizations, the Pittsburgh Knights, Charlotte Phoenix, and then things took a little turn as well as like how Apex is in general. It kind of pushed me away to explore a little bit because I want to stay in esports, whether that's coaching, general managing, talent scout, whatever. I don't know exactly yet. And I think it's best for me to kind of look for those opportunities besides competing because as kids nowadays are, 12, 13, putting in way more time and getting insane. So I thought it'd be best to kind of study and do things elsewhere and grow my resume a bit.
I gotta ask, what's it like playing alongside a guy like Timmy? Not many people get the chance. What was that like in a professional setting?
In a professional settings, honestly, he was never really like angry. He was always calm. He did get mad once, and that was like my jaw dropped because as you know, you watch Timmy, he's like very positive, kind of chill, laid back dude. Um, and he got mad once, and I got mad with him because it was more of like a team mistake, and it was a big mistake because it was for a big tournament, and we just couldn't get over it. But other than that, it was great playing with him. He's a great friend as well. Uh, I've known him since 10 viewers, and he has never treated me differently ever since he's grown. And in fact, he brings me up with him still to this day, and it's great.
Dude, that's so cool. I've actually had the chance to meet like a few Apex people all around, like We the People and Nicewig and Noko. I feel like everyone or a lot of you guys have known each other since a very early on time, and everyone says the same thing about like they've all stayed the same. Like all of y'all have grown together and been around for a long, long time. And even though some people like Timmy have obviously really, really blown up, they've all stayed the same. Everyone has good things to say about each other.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what's great about like the players in Apex. I do pay close attention to the Valorant scene because I have a lot of friends there, and I like playing the rank system there, and it seems like everyone just loves each other. Like it's like a community type thing, and there's very hardly any beef. If there's ever drama, it's like a very short amount of time, but everyone gets over it and just smiles at the end of the day.
And so what got you initially into gaming? I won't linger too on this, but I am curious. What initially got you into gaming?
When I was like 5 or 6, my dad's present to me actually was Grand Theft Auto, and I was uh, I was pretty hooked on to it. And then and if you're talking about competitive gaming, at least, um, ever since then, at least, I kept playing video games. But in terms of competitive gaming, when Apex released, there was two tournaments. There was like a Twitch Rivals tournament with like Ninja and all this for like 500K. All the big streamers were playing it. And at the time, I was like a nobody. And there was a secondary tournament where all the pros that may be in the scene now or people that were back then competed in for 20,000. And my friends who are currently on 100 Thieves, we won that. And we just felt like on cloud nine type stuff because we've never had like a tournament we won like this big. No one knows us. We all came from a different game together, and it felt nice. So that's kind of like the push to competitive.
And so you said you've had your ups and downs playing Apex professionally, with some outside circumstances, but also with the game itself causing part of that. Can you elaborate more on what you meant by, Apex maybe causing some of its own issues?
Yeah, of course. The main thing, and I would say is very relatable to relationships, friendships, and just business in general, is communication. Uh, and I understand that, Respawn slash EA is a company. They're companies that have a lot on their plate. They deal with a lot, right? Probably like I would say majority of the players may not understand what they had to deal with in terms of pushing out patches and how it works with multiple consoles, etc. And dealing with all of that, I definitely respect them for all of that, but a little bit more clarity and communication would be nice. there's a lot of situations, such as like the Texas land. Even though it was 2 years ago, it still feels like it's an issue to this day. The Texas land, if you didn't know, that was like the second land, I believe, from EA Respawn, that was supposed to happen, but COVID was on an uprising, and there was teams flying out from EU, Japan, Asia, everywhere around the world, and a w- they were already in the U.S. ready for the Texas Major, and in a week before, that's when they decide to say, "Oh, it's postponed." And in fact, we never even heard about it afterwards. I assume it's completely scrapped. But yeah, it's like that type of communications where it's very last minute. And as you can tell with the scrim thing that Nocturno and How are talking about, I'm sure there's communication somewhat privately, but even publicly, there's tournaments hosted for the public, such as the Chipotle Challenger Series, where you win literally like a full year Chipotle and some money. Uh, Esports arenas. There's a lot of tournaments happening where the public can enter, and all they have to say is they had to postpone it because of this private server issue, and there's no communication from EA or Respawn talking about how soon a fix is coming or anything to the public because in fact the Chipotle series, they hosted the tournament and they kept going with knowing like the problem was occurring, and they just kept going. People were getting kicked left and right. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, it was like a huge backlash.
Yeah, I saw a bit of an eruption. For those who don't know, though, I only saw a few tweets, but to be frank, they said that the Chipotle H series was an absolute horrid show, a horrid event. Can you elaborate a bit more for the public who didn't actually catch that? Because it wasn't really picked up by too many news outlets. How
Yeah,
horrendous it was.
I I'd imagine like if you enter this tournament and you hear a full year Chipotle, a lot of money on the line, some Logitech gear, it could be money in general is pretty life changing, right? And full year food, and that's something that a lot of people are like, oh, that is a great opportunity for me and my friends to kind of compete, as well as there's some pretty decent prizes on the line, and they kept running the tournaments qualifier after qualifiers. There was four qualifiers, and every single one there were issues. But what they decided to change was the rule set of, oh, if this many people disconnect, then we'll restart it and stuff like that. And it was very poorly ran. Um, and in fact, that's actually one of the reasons why I didn't get to qualify, unfortunately. And my teammates like Designful and then we felt really confident going into it, and unfortunately we kept getting disconnected on like the final matchup and stuff like that. We got two disconnects every single time, and they wouldn't restart the server. They just kept going. And then for the final, of course, it's the final where all their partnered players come and stuff like that, and it's the big time. That's when they decide to postpone it. So it kind of felt like a little slap in the face to the public, in my opinion, and to the community that like, oh, you guys had to deal with this, and it's essentially just luck by qualifying because whoever gets DC gets to stay alive and qualify, or who doesn't, right?
Yeah, and it seems to be a consistent issue as well. I mean, we saw it with Sweden for a variety of issues. There were, unfortunately, I believe, a few teams with visa issues for Sweden, the $1 million land. But, we also saw the public eruption, which luckily changed the fact that only half the teams were going to be funded to actually, have accommodations to go to the event. But then again, with that $1 million land, the first return to land in quite some time, you saw similar issues of maybe a lack of communication or transparency at the right times, which several teams unfortunately suffered the consequences of.
Yeah. It's really common in my opinion. I remember I made like a little collage or like montage video um, about the competitive scene of Apex, like just a bunch of like it's meant to be funny, a little laugh, but all like the failures or like the problems of communications. There's multiple times where Winner Circuit or online tournament one was another one where literally the day of, that's when they decided to postpone the tournament because there was like ongoing bug where the pros kept expressing their feelings on the matter on Twitter and stuff like that. They kept saying that this shouldn't be going, the tournament shouldn't happen, and then boom, everyone's checking in, everyone's joining the lobby, and then they say, oh, it's postponed because we couldn't figure out a fix. And that's something like I wish we get a little bit more communication. They all these meta changes weeks before, like a week before, 2 weeks before. It happens multiple times in tournaments where essentially then you're readjusting on the fly, right? Um, so unfortunately, I've kind of voiced my opinions on it on social media at least. I kind of dialed down, and that's kind of the reason why I stepped back. It sucks for the people who are trying to make this a thing who don't have the funding. Um, you know, I am in a lucky position where I am salaried and I can play, and if it gets postponed, I'm like, oh, okay, it sucks, but I still have my job. But there's a lot of people on the line because Apex at the time before Sweden essentially, um, there was not many organizations on the line. Like there's a great amount, but there's not many players being salaried or anything, and or they're getting salaried very low, but they still have to do another job. They still have a secondary job or their main job, I would say, and they would have to call off time and stuff like that. And just for it to be delayed or postponed with very little communication, it sucks. Like they called off work or they called off family time, and they're not being salaried. They're doing this because they want to make it, and they can't make it in a sense because of certain situations happening.
And would you say that the problems ongoing with the lack of communication and the problems with the game itself contributed to you taking a step back and maybe reconsidering, your future?
Uh, Honestly, so when I took my step back, that I wouldn't say that's like the main reason. Um, the main reason was because I wanted to stay in esports and I wanted to figure out how. Not as a professional player, because like we kind of said, it's very hard to be a snipe down. That's a lot of work, a lot of time. He's been in the scene for a while and he's very talented at many games. Um, and that's kind of my reason to step back. But I did step back like a secondary reason because it's everywhere. Where I put in so much time into this that I lost a lot of family time, relationship time, and I'm one of the few that are in college as well, trying full-time student as well as being a professional player, um, and it was very frustrating trying to organize everything. And I understand that it may be like every job you have to do that, but in an esports world where I devoted so much time sitting on my chair, just staring at my screen, practicing and trying to play and figure out things, it got to the point, especially since like salaries at the time were not livable at all. It was just frustrating. And so I decided to take a step back because I can't deal with that, especially coming into my last year of college. That's where college gets a little bit more tougher, right? You're dealing with the classes specific to your major. So I decided to take a step back in that sense because it was too much of a hassle to figure out when can I do what I need to do in order to succeed in everything, not just in gaming.
Yeah, for sure. Can you also maybe elaborate? What we first initially spoke of was the current ongoing situation for pros as we slowly approach ALGS champs and a $2 million event. And we've seen several pros complaining about the ongoing issues, of which there's a variety that some have been around for a while, including when it comes time for practice, a lackluster for teams. Can you elaborate on the full situation of what some of these pros are going through currently ahead of the $2 million event?
These pros are really frustrated, and I respect them for putting their voice out there, and they should, and more pros should. It isn't. I can only imagine that it's extremely frustrating for a team like Liquid, where Nocturnal just got second place at Sweden and only wants to improve to get that first place, and every team under him who wants to perform better, and they can't have that practice, right? It's already hard to get proper practice in Apex, only because of it it's very like the community in general. So if you didn't know, it's already hard getting people to scrim in the first place. And when people slowly got better, teams refused to scrim before because of like information or they felt like they're at the top and stuff like that. And eventually that slowly changed where more teams are coming. And that's currently right now, and more teams want to practice. Um, but they can't, right? They can't practice. They can't improve. Ranked is not good enough practice because the matchmaking at the moment, you're matching against gold and platinums, even sometimes silver players who definitely aren't near your skill level, right? So they're kind of just steamrolling, and the practice at that point is just like shooting your gun, right? It's very hard to practice communication, strategy, and stuff like that. The one thing I wish like us as a Apex community kind of like change is like the praise for changes. I completely understand that you should be respecting EA Respawn when they push out a patch and be happy about it, but I feel like you shouldn't be happy until it's fixed completely, right? You get what I'm saying? Like we're still going to deal with these ongoing issues. Players have to resort to rank. Like it's just not enough practice as well. It's already hard. You can imagine grabbing international teams. different time zones and what server is going to be hosted on, right? Just for it to not ever happen. Like these international teams probably have it even more rough because there's more teams in North America and Europe. So when it goes to the Asia region or the South American region, they don't have enough top tier teams to fill up an entire lobby to practice within their own region, right? So that I can only imagine it's very, very frustrating. And personally, I am happy not to be in the scene right now as a competitor because I would not like to deal with that. But when just Apex is growing and watching it, oh, I love it, and I'm sure many people do. But I wish more than just the pro players really understand what we're going through right now, and I think it's slowly coming to that point with Nocturnal's tweet, Imperial's Hal's tweet, and um, Sweet's tweet. I think more people are coming to an understanding of we're not getting enough practice, and this tournament's right around the corner. But I wish it feels like Respawn and EA aren't hearing that. You know what I mean?
I wish I could put it into like a proper context of what it must be like to be an Apex Pro with all of the ongoing issues. And I don't even think I can name all of the issues, whether it's a lack of transparency or communication from Respawn or EA, a lack of proper timing when it comes to $1 million events so teams can figure out visa issues. There's a lack of a proper way to get practice in. There is potential in-game bugs or last-second meta shifts is what I'm hearing from y'all. And then beyond that, you talk about, I guess when it comes to, I don't know, a slew of other things. It seems like there's a freaking lot that goes into being an Apex Pro that it's hard to be in any esport, but it sounds like a very stressful environment to put yourself in.
Yeah, it just everything feels like I understand like Apex kind of caught people off guard. How they released it was very last minute as well. Or this is not last minute for them, but like the announcement, right? Apex kind of just happened. It kind of just popped up, and it worked like extremely well in my opinion in terms of like quote unquote marketing. Like it was just hey, boom, new BR, go play it, and everyone fell in love. And in my opinion, they probably weren't ready for it. They probably didn't expect it to be that successful and that crazy. So things did take a little bit of time of getting it rolling, the esports scene and stuff like that. And I completely understand that. But I feel like we're at a time where, um, you know, Valorant months prior saying, "Oh, we're dealing with franchising. And this is where VCT is happening or whatever, Berlin, all of that. It's months prior, so people are and organizations are prepared. I feel like prices for international flights aren't cheap, right? Especially when it gets closer to the time. So I feel like sometimes, even to me, and I could be wrong about this because, like I said, Apex Legends is my first esports, but a month or 3 weeks prior to announcing where the next LAN is or where the LAN is, um, I feel like that's pretty pricey. I feel like if it's 2 months prior, it's still accurate, right? You can still get a better pricing, a little bit more suitable for everybody to afford and go to. Because, like I said, not everyone going is represented by an organization and everything's paid for.
Yeah, and again, it's another complicated issue. We don't know about how acquiring those visas can be a lengthy process for a lot
Yeah,
of teams out
exactly.
there. Some teams go out weeks prior to boot camp, especially for $1 million events. So if I believe this one was announced about 2 months ahead. So if it takes your player, who knows if it takes weeks to get a visa, and then you got to go boot camp for a few weeks ahead or a couple weeks ahead too. Who knows what the quarantine protocol is? What if one of your guys gets COVID? Then you're fricked completely. So it seems like there are so many complications that can happen with it being such a tight-knit schedule. Obviously, it's really tough to deal with so many teams, right? And so many staff and members when you got a BR, and who knows how many players for each team, of course, with staff included. It's got to be a complicated mess for EA and Respawn. And so, like you said, I think it kind of snuck up on them how it is amazing to watch, but it's very complicated to get all of these teams to show up and to treat all of these teams fairly and give them all the proper heads up and communication to get there, and then let alone to make your game work as well.
Yeah, it you can only imagine the pro chat or how upset we are whenever there's like a store in the bug or a bug in the store where there's like, oh, you can't buy the skin. Instantly fixed, instantly like, just looked at. But when it comes to private servers, like, man, it is extremely frustrating to see that type of stuff. There's a few things definitely they hopped on pretty quick and I respect it, like really game breaking bugs. But there are also been bugs in the game that it's been quote unquote a bug for a while, I believe I put in that montage where it's like a caustic bug um, for 2 to 3 or like 2 years, and he said it was a bug, and they never changed it or fixed it. There's a lot of things that they said they're looking into, even right now, years prior, and it still hasn't been addressed. They said they'll get back to us, but they never did.
Can you lastly explain this whole private server issue? Because I'm trying to put this into like, a different picture for other esports. I mean, we're talking about $1 million events, multi-million-dollar events, and several pros out there constantly complaining about the fact that ranked is their best way to practice and their best way to scrim because of these private in-game issues. So what exactly is the issue? Like these pros can't practice ahead of the biggest events of their lives?
If I'm honest, personally, I don't know the exact issue. I don't know if EA and Respawn does. I don't know if the pro like do or not. From what I experienced from playing in the Chipotle tournament and joining private servers and stuff like that, it's randomly crashing, randomly disconnecting players. And I don't know if they know what the fix is or not, or why it's taking so long. But from my experience, that's what it seems like the issue is. I could be wrong. There could be other issues with it, or it could be a completely different issue. But from my experience, like the Chipotle thing, that's what it was all about. Everyone was disconnecting. The servers kept crashing. The tournament went from supposedly supposed to be like 4 hours to 6 to 8, 6 to 7 hours. So that's kind of how it is.
Gotcha. Well, it seems like a stressful environment. Curious to see where your future goes. And again, thank you for taking the time to explain a few of the ongoing issues of being a pro in Apex.
Of course, and thank you for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you and talking to you and expressing how I feel and hopefully for other pros as well.
Heck yeah.